Finding a horror movie that actually delivers on its dark promises, yeah, that can be a massive gamble. But today, we're unpacking a review for Evil Dead Burn, and let me tell you, this film absolutely pulls no punches. Okay, let's dive into this, because according to our source material, if you're looking for an incredibly dark, intense experience, this movie demands to be at the very top of your watch list. We're going to use this explainer to break down exactly what makes this movie tick, and the specific visual and narrative tools it uses to get so deeply under your skin. The review comes out swinging right out of the gate, calling the tension relentless. It literally says it rarely gives you a chance to breathe. I mean, think about your absolute favorite horror experiences. The truly great ones completely master the art of pacing, right? Well, what's highlighted here is that from the very opening moments, this film just slams on the gas and refuses to let up. It completely skips that comfortable, slow buildup where you get to ease into the world. Instead, boom, it applies the pressure instantly and keeps it there. It's this suffocating, incredibly fast-paced brand of horror that's going to keep you completely glued to the edge of your seat the whole way through. And that suffocating feeling, it isn't just about the pacing. It's heavily driven by some deeply disturbing visuals. And this brilliantly illustrates how the movie doesn't just rely on sudden loud noises or cheap jump scares. No, it actively assaults you with this insanely creepy atmosphere and truly brutal imagery. It's one thing to tell a scary story, but it's an entirely different level of filmmaking to craft a world that makes you feel deeply unsettled just by looking at it. The visual design here is doing some serious heavy lifting to make sure that relentless tension we just talked about never drops for a single second. To actually pull off those brutal scares, the filmmakers leaned incredibly hard into impressive practical effects and gore. You know, in an era where so much of cinema just relies on CGI, there is something so incredibly visceral and terrifying about tangible physical effects. The review highlights this as a major strength of the film. The bloody action isn't just tossed in for cheap shock value. It's executed in a way that feels dangerously, physically real. It literally gives the horror a weight and a presence in the room that you just can't easily replicate with pixels on a screen. This total dedication to tangible, in-camera gore creates what the reviewer calls a terrifying experience for fans of classic horror. And look, we all know classic horror enthusiasts are a famously demanding crowd, right? They know the history of this genre inside and out. But by utilizing these wild practical effects, Evil Dead Burn is speaking their exact language. It's a very deliberate, super respectful nod to the days when filmmakers actually had to figure out how to create monsters practically, right there on the set. That dedication to hands-on, bloody action, that's exactly what's going to deeply satisfy longtime fans. The review gets pretty nuanced here, especially when looking at the story's originality. It totally acknowledges that the plot relies pretty heavily on familiar horror elements and tropes we've all probably seen before. So no, it isn't exactly reinventing the wheel narratively speaking. But, and this is a huge but, the sheer masterful execution of its strong atmosphere and suspense completely overshadows those cliches. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if you think you know where the story's heading, because the shocking moments and that overwhelmingly tense atmosphere keep things highly entertaining. It really just goes to show that in horror, execution is absolutely everything. Amidst all this wild chaos, there's a distinctly human element holding the whole thing together. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the reviewer specifically points out the convincing performances that make the characters feel real as they struggle to survive the nightmare. Because, let's be real, you can have the greatest practical effects and the creepiest visuals in the world, but if you don't actually care about the people on the screen, the horror falls completely flat. The strong cast here totally grounds the film, making this intense survival story genuinely believable. When they're terrified, we're terrified. Their struggle is the emotional anchor that stops all that bloody action from just being meaningless noise. So the crucial point is figuring out exactly who this movie is actually built for. Well, if you're a fan of supernatural horror, this is absolutely for you. If demonic possession is a subgenre that gets under your skin in the best way possible, definitely for you. And if you crave intense survival stories where everyday people are just pushed to their absolute physical and mental limits, this movie is tailored directly to your tastes. It takes those super specific, beloved themes and just blends them into one highly concentrated, terrifying package. So what's the final verdict? It's a thrilling horror ride with creepy visuals, brutal scares, and plenty of bloody action. I mean, just hearing that accelerates the pulse a little bit, doesn't it? It perfectly mirrors the roller coaster thrill of the movie itself. The reviewer promises a real ride, something incredibly fast, exhilarating, and deeply terrifying. It basically wraps up everything we've been unpacking in this explainer today: the visual darkness, the tangible gore, and that nonstop gripping momentum. Based on all that evidence, the fantastic practical effects, the totally relentless pacing, and the grounded acting that really elevates a familiar story, it easily earns a very solid 4 out of 5 stars. The source makes it crystal clear that if you are a fan of this genre, this movie is without a doubt worth your time. It genuinely delivers on its dark promises and totally stands out as a top-tier horror experience.
So, with everything we've uncovered today, the brutal scares, the suffocating atmosphere, and that absolute relentless tension, are you brave enough to check it out? Or are you going to leave this particular nightmare strictly on the screen? Let that sink in as you decide what you're watching next. Thank you so much for joining me to break this down. And as always, keep seeking out the knowledge and the stories that truly make you feel something. Catch you next time.